The stench hit the ambassadors before they even stepped foot into the throne room. It was as if a corpse had been left out under the sun for a week, then marinated in a blend of rotten eggs and human waste, but nobody had died. That was simply the aroma of King James, the first of England, on a good day. This man, who commissioned the Bible that countless people still read today, hadn't bathed in years. His tongue was too large for his mouth, causing him to drool incessantly. His clothes were so infested with lice that courtiers could see them jumping around like tiny acrobats. And here's the kicker: he was one of the more normal kings I'll talk about today. When you give someone absolute power, a gilded throne, and an entourage of sycophants whose sole purpose is to tell them how magnificent they are, it doesn't result in wise philosopher kings. Instead, you end up with some of the most bizarre, deranged figures in history. We're talking about rulers who believed they were made of glass, queens who ate themselves into shapes that required custom coffins, and emperors who attempted to make their horses senators. And just to clarify, that last example isn't even a metaphor for modern politics, though it could easily be interpreted as such. In the next few minutes, I'm going to take you through a remarkable freak show of medieval and ancient royalty. These are the 11 rulers whose peculiar habits and antics were so bizarre that they make modern celebrities look like models of normalcy. Trust me, after hearing about a king who died laughing at a joke about a deer, you'll never complain about your eccentric coworker again. Let's kick things off with number 11, because we need to ease into this madness. Charles VI of France is one of the tamer entries on the list. This French king suffered from what he called glass delusions. He genuinely believed he was made of glass and would shatter if anyone touched him. Picture this: the King of France, one of the most powerful men in medieval Europe, walking around with iron rods sewn into his clothing to prevent himself from breaking. He refused to let anyone touch him and wouldn't sit down too abruptly. At times, he'd even forget he was king, requiring his servants to remind him, "Your Majesty, you have a council meeting." His response, "I do? Why?" "Because you're the king." Oh, right, the bizarre part. This wasn't even that rare for the time. Glass delusions were like a medieval version of thinking you're allergic to WF. Multiple nobles had them, and there was even a term for it: scholar's melancholy. Apparently, in the Middle Ages, if you thought too hard, your brain just decided you were made of glass, which explains a lot about the decision-making of that era. But at least Charles VI's illusion was just sad. Number 10 on our list, Peter III of Russia, had habits that were downright embarrassing. This grown man, the Emperor of all Russia, played with dolls not as a collector, but actually engaging in elaborate storylines and voices. And this wasn't a private affair. He forced his wife, yes, the future Catherine the Great, and his entire court to participate until 2 or 3 in the morning. Imagine being one of the most powerful women in Russia, and your husband makes you enact toy soldier battles at 2 a.m. Come on, Catherine, make the cavalry charge sound, nay, nay. It's no wonder she allegedly had him assassinated. Officially, he died of hemorrhoidal colic. Fancy talk for his butt hurt so badly it killed him. But seriously, your husband makes you play with dolls every night and then dies from severe but pain? That's not a coincidence, that's a motive. Peter also had a peculiar obsession with Prussia. He donned Prussian military attire and primarily spoke German instead of Russian. And once he even freed a rat from execution because it reminded him of a Prussian soldier. Yes, you heard correctly. The rat had chewed through his toy soldiers, so Peter court-martialed it, holding a full military trial for a rodent. In the end, he pardoned the rat, deeming it to have displayed commendable Prussian discipline. This is what happens when one holds absolute power, folks. A quick note: if you're re-enjoying these utterly unhinged historical facts that definitely weren't tea in your textbooks, hit that like button. It helps others discover just how strange history truly was. Number 9 brings us to Farouk of Egypt, and this guy took the concept of sticky fingers to a whole new level. King Farouk was a kleptomaniac, but not just any kleptomaniac, a pickpocketing king. With unlimited wealth, multiple palaces, and a wardrobe of over 1,000 expensive suits, what did he do for fun? He picked pockets. Winston Churchill once left a meeting with Farouk only to realize his watch was missing. The king had stolen it. During state dinners, guests would discover missing wallets, jewelry, and even medals. Farouk actually trained himself in the art of pickpocketing, which he called the hand of the thief, and he was reportedly quite good at it. Imagine being so bored with your unlimited power that you decide to take up crime as a hobby. But pickpocketing was just the start. Farouk was obsessed with all things red. He owned hundreds of red cars and issued orders that no one else in Egypt could own a red car. If he spotted one, he'd have it confiscated to add to his collection. He once shot out the tires of a red car that tried to pass his convoy only to find out the driver was a diplomat. An international incident? Nah, just another Tuesday for King Farouk. He also had the largest collection of pornography in the world, which he insisted was for educational purposes. Sure, buddy. You need 10,000 items for education. He was so overweight that he required a reinforced bed and a custom chair. When he sat at restaurants, they had to remove the arms from chairs for him to fit. He would order every item on the menu, everything, and then complain that he was still hungry. Now, number 8 on our list met his end in a fashion so ridiculous it could belong in a Monty Python sketch. King Martin of Aragon, also known as Martin the Humane, a fitting name, given that his death was anything but dignified. In 1410, Martin had just consumed an entire goose. Not a portion, a whole goose by himself. His court jester, attempting to lighten the mood after this display of gluttony, told him a joke. A deer was hanging by its tail from a tree because it had been stealing figs. That's it. No punchline, just a mental image of a deer hanging from a tree. But Martin found it so hysterical that he laughed uncontrollably for 3 hours. Yes, 3 hours. He laughed so hard he couldn't breathe, turned purple, fell off his chair, and ultimately died. Imagine being that jester. Your job is to entertain the king, and you accidentally kill him with a mediocre joke about fruit-stealing wildlife. Do you put that on your resume? Successfully made king laugh to death. How do you even explain that to Christian VII, the next king? Well, it's a funny story about that. Moving on to number 7, we have Christian VII of Denmark, not known for evil, but for sheer bonkers behavior. His daily routine was like a highlight reel of mental illness. He masturbated excessively, so much that his doctors had to prescribe a special chair to prevent injuries. He slapped people randomly, even foreign dignitaries. Slap at a state dinner? Check. Slap during peace negotiations? Check. Slap his own wedding? You bet. It gets weirder. Christian would run around the palace at night, smashing furniture and artwork, leaping over tables during formal dinners. He once declared his dog a government minister, not in a joking sense, but seriously expected people to follow the dog's orders. Imagine those cabinet meetings. What does Minister Fluffy think about the new tax policy? Woof, excellent point. He even played leapfrog, not with children or in private, but with foreign ambassadors during official visits. Can you imagine being sent to negotiate a treaty and the king insists on playing leapfrog in the throne room? Do you let him win? What's the diplomatic protocol for telling a king he's really bad at leapfrog? At number 6, we find Emperor Caligula of Rome. Honestly, where do you even begin? This guy makes everyone else on this list appear relatively well-adjusted. Caligula didn't just have weird habits, he elevated weird to an art form. Let's start with his horse, Incitatus. This wasn't just a beloved pet. Caligula constructed a marble stable with an ivory manger for it. The horse had its own servants, wore a jeweled collar, and draped in purple blankets, purple being the imperial color that regular Romans could be executed for wearing. But the bizarre part? Caligula invited his horse to dinner parties, not as entertainment, but as a guest. He even planned to make the horse a consul of Rome, essentially a prime minister. Imagine losing a promotion to a horse. Caligula also declared himself a god and demanded people worship him. He established priests and temples and even had sacrifices made to himself. Speaking of showing off, number 5 is King Ludwig II of Bavaria, known as the Swan King or Mad King Ludwig. But it doesn't stop there. His servants had to adapt to this schedule, maintaining an entire nighttime court. He even had a servant's teeth pulled because the man's false teeth clicked when he talked, disrupting the king's fairy tale atmosphere. But the strangest behavior of Ludwig? He hosted imaginary dinner parties with settings for Louis XIV, Marie Antoinette, and other long-dead royals. He'd converse with the empty chairs, proposing toasts and asking for their opinions on modern politics. Can you imagine being a servant trying to keep a straight face while your boss chats with empty seats about the Franco-Prussian War? We're halfway through this list, and you'll want to brace yourself. The weirdness is about to escalate. If you think talking to imaginary dinner guests is strange, wait until you hear about number 4, Ibrahim the Mad of the Ottoman Empire. His habits weren't just peculiar, they were catastrophically bizarre, bordering on empire-destroying weird. After spending 22 years locked away in a luxurious prison for Ottoman princes, convinced he'd be executed at any moment when he finally ascended to the throne, he went absolutely bonkers with power. The first sign of his eccentricity? An obsession with fur? Not just wearing it, but covering everything in fur walls, floors, ceilings. He'd swathe himself in sable furs even during the sweltering summer in Istanbul. His beard was perfumed with amber, and his clothes were so laden with fur and jewels that he could hardly move. But that was relatively tame compared to his main fixation, large women. When I say large, I mean he took it to an extreme that defies belief. Ibrahim issued a decree mandating the search for the fattest woman in the empire. They found an Armenian woman named Sugar Cube who weighed around 330 pounds and, delighted, he made her Governor General of Damascus with an extravagant pension. He had them all tied in weighted sacks and drowned in the Bosphorus, all 280 of them in a single night. The screams echoed across the strait. One woman managed to untie her sack and swim to shore, where she was rescued by French sailors. Her harrowing story remains the only account of those dreadful events. And had rivers of mercury woven into his tomb. Essentially, he was marinating himself in one of the deadliest substances known to man, all while wondering why he was feeling worse and worse. Stay tuned as we round out this list with even more bizarre historical figures that will leave you questioning reality.